Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Miranda and I am the Enchantress of Avalon. And for today's video, I decided as we are getting towards the end of October, we're less than 2 weeks away from Halloween, I would be discussing witch goddesses. And I do want to preface, I'm only going to really talk a little bit about three goddesses. It's going to be about 14-15 minutes like all of my videos are. And I want to preface it by saying there's a difference between goddesses worshipped by witches and goddesses who are associated with witchcraft. The three I am going to discuss are all associated with magic and witchcraft itself. Any god or goddess can be, any deity in any pagan deity or even the Christian god can be worshipped by a witch and called on for magic. However, there are certain goddesses that are specifically associated with magic practices and with witchcraft. And today I'll be talking about, of course, Hecate, who is the Greek goddess of witchcraft. And one more brief preface, I do know that there are different ways to pronounce her name. She's often referred to as Hecate by modern pagans, and also if you go with like the medieval or Renaissance English translation of her name, it was Hecate. When Shakespeare used her in Macbeth, it was mostly pronounced Hecate, but I use Hecate. I like that pronunciation best, and according to my research, it's also the more Greek pronunciation of the name, so that's the one I use. And so Hecate, Morgan Le Fay, or Morgana, and Freya are the three goddesses I'm going to be talking about today. Of course, I worked Morgan Le Fay into this. Everyone knows how much I love her, but she genuinely is a goddess of witches. So, let's start with Hecate, as she is the oldest worshipped goddess of these, at least that we have sources for. And Hecate was a Titan goddess who sided with the Olympians during the Clash of the Titans, and she was an incredibly powerful goddess. So when the Olympians won, Zeus allowed Hecate choice. Like, you have areas in all of the different realms you can live in. Choose one. And she chose to live in the underworld. It's where she was comfortable. So that is why she's also often closely linked to Hades and Persephone, in that she lived in the underworld. She chose that as her place because she was an incredibly powerful goddess. And Zeus did not want to piss her off. Zeus even admired and feared Hecate because of how powerful she was. And it's an interesting note that, as well as being a goddess of witches, she's also the aunt, at least in most variations of the myth, she is the aunt of the first official witch, Circe. You know, the great Circe from the Odyssey. I will definitely do a video on her one of these days. She is absolutely fabulous, and she was the niece of Hecate because she was the daughter of Helios, the sun god, the sun titan, and a nymph. I mean, her mother was a nymph. A lot of them were a lot of mothers of famous, demigod figures were nymphs. And so that's an interesting connection right there, because you're having a connection between the goddess of witches and the first actual Greek witch. So they are actually related. That's really fun for me. Hecate also ruled over the crossroads, and she had symbols like keys were a symbol of hers. And it was very often that at a crossroads marking, you would see effigies of Hecate. And also there were effigies of Hermes, because both Hecate and Hermes were associated with travelers and with safe passage through places. And that brings me up into another point that's really important for many witch goddesses, because many goddesses who are associated with magic and witchcraft are also psychopomps. Now, for those of you who don't know, a psychopomp is someone who can traverse worlds, and specifically someone who can take someone from the realm of the living into the realm of the dead. Obviously, Hecate had free reign over all of the different places in the Greek world. I told you Zeus gave her land everywhere. Like, you could live wherever you'd like, and she chose the underworld. But choosing the underworld meant that she had free reign to go back and forth. There's really only four gods that had free reign to go back and forth between the world of the living and the world of the dead in Greek myth. Hermes, because he was, again, associated with travelers, but he was also the messenger of the gods. Hades and Persephone, they were the king and queen of the underworld. And Hecate, she lived there as well, and she had free reign to go wherever she pleased. Very powerful. Now, let's talk a little bit about Morgan Le Fay and Freya and how they are also goddesses of witches. Morgan Le Fay, you may know her just as the evil enchantress and evil sorceress of Arthurian legend. Well, yeah, she is that, but she began as a goddess, and she was she was actually an extremely powerful goddess. We don't know exactly what her origins as a goddess were, but we do know that she would have been known enough as a goddess that she was included in Geoffrey of Monmouth's Vita Merlini. This is the first literary source, and it's the first source we have that just says her name is Morgan, spelled Morgen this time. But every way that he describes her is obviously a goddess. She's a powerful healer. She is the supreme amongst nine sisters, her coven, witch connection there. She is a supremely benevolent figure, and she rules over the Isle of Avalon. The Isle of Avalon is, besides being a fairy realm, because she is a fairy goddess and fairy queen, it is also a land of the dead. This is why the dying Arthur is brought to Avalon to be healed or to reside there until the time when England would need him the most again. This is the once and future king principle. And in this earliest literary iteration, we only really get a couple paragraphs about her, but it's so evocative. The couple paragraphs describing Avalon and describing Morgan and her sisters. The others, they're named, but not a lot is given about the other sisters. But Morgan, it is said she is the most beautiful, she is the most talented, and the most powerful of the sisters. And we get this great description of her flying on strange wings like Daedalus. And this is her connection to ravens. And actually behind me is one of my images of Morgana. It's a poster. And she does have raven wings, and there is a raven in the background of that poster back there. So this is this evocative thing. Morgan is associated with the realms of the dead, with healing, with magic from the get-go. There's a lot of debate of, okay, well, she was obviously worshipped as a goddess, but where and how? There's a lot of arguments over if she was derived from the Morrigan, actually, if she at one time was the Morrigan, the Irish war goddess. There are links. However, there will be scholars and pagans who debate it back and forth whether they are one and the same or not. If you go just based on the name, then that is a very tenuous thing. They just sound similar because Morrigan is Irish for Great Queen or Phantom Queen, where Morgan is Welsh, meaning sea-born. So they mean totally different things. But moving on, I'm going to just talk a little bit about Freya. Freya was, of course, the Norse goddess of love and war, but she was also the goddess of witchcraft, and that's one that people sometimes forget about. She was a goddess of witchcraft because she was a member of the Vanir, who came to Asgard, and became associated with Aesir, but she was originally a member of the Vanir. And the Vanir were fertility deities. They were deities of land and nature, where the Aesir, like Odin, he's more associated with other elements. He wasn't a fertility god. And they're more concerned with the cerebral. Like, cerebral, that's a good way to put it. They're more concerned with the cerebral. So, when Freya came, though, she brought with her knowledge of an ancient magic known as Sedir. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. It's Seidr. And there's an accent. My pronunciation of Norse phrasing is not the best. I do not speak any of the Norse languages, any of those Nordic languages, so I do apologize if I'm pronouncing it wrong. But Sedir, it's a prophetic type of witchcraft, and it was originally only practiced by women, by witches, known as Volva, and Freya would have been the goddess that they prayed to. And interestingly, it's usually said in most of the tellings of the Norse myths that the only man to ever learn this skill was Odin. Odin's the All-Father. He is all-knowing. He wants to know everything. So just like he hung for 9 days and nights on Yggdrasil, the world tree, to gain the runes, he wanted to learn Sedir. So Freya taught it to him. First of all, that's really amazing, and it shows just how much of a great goddess Freya is, that the supreme god of the pantheon is asking her to teach him something. But it also shows her intimate connection with witchcraft. And I want to mention something else about Freya that is very much witchy. It's that her sacred animal is the cat. Well, she has 2 sacred animals. Her other one is a boar, B-O-A-R, a swine, a pig. Both her and her twin brother Freyr have swine as a sacred animal to them, but her primary sacred animal that's associated with her is cats, and this is a devotional to Freya, Fire Jewel, and it is really beautiful work, and obviously her association with cats is right on the cover. There's a picture of her with a cat, and her chariot is pulled by white cats. Obviously, cats are an animal closely linked with witchcraft. We usually link black cats with witchcraft, and Freya's were normally described as either white or gray, but the connection holds. And I mentioned Morgan's connection with ravens or crows. Ravens and crows are both associated with magic as well. It's often that we think of as ravens and crows have that little bit of a gothic, creepy feeling about them. So they're often depicted as being familiars to witches. In the case of Hecate, her sacred animal is hounds. So she is associated with hounds. And hounds, or any type of dog, are also associated with being familiars to witches, as are wolves. So you have this coming together of all these elements that links these 3 goddesses with magic and witchcraft. They all practice magic in their stories. They all have the ability to help or harm with magic, and they all have associations with different magical beings and were worshipped from ancient times by witches. So that is why they are witch goddesses, as opposed to goddesses worshipped by witches. They actually practiced the magic that these witches would also have practiced and often taught them that magic. So I hope that you have enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, comment, subscribe. Check out my blog, whiteroseofavalon.life, and also join my Discord. I will link some blog posts. I will link my Discord server in the description box below, and I will also link my Twitch channel in the description box below, because I will be streaming tonight on Twitch. If you're watching this on Friday, October 21st of 2022, when it's being published, I will be streaming a day early this week. So I will be streaming on Friday, and I will probably get going around 6 or 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So have a great, frightful Friday. Bye now.